So this is my top 25 after week 2. I'm going to do this every week throughout the regular season. This, my Heisman top 10, and then a little section that I call the bottom 5. And I'll explain that when we get there. But let's start with my top 25. So number 1, I have Georgia, and y'all can call me biased all you want, since I am a Georgia fan, but we are the defending national champions. We've allowed 3 points through our first 2 games, and I know it was Samford, and 33-0 doesn't look like the most impressive scoreline, but Georgia put up 30 points in the first half, then took out all their starters. And I saw some stat, it was like 15 different receivers caught a pass. Kenny McIntosh, our running back, is 5th in the SEC in rushing and no, in receiving yards. But next week we do play South Carolina, which is gonna be our first decent test, but Georgia should still take that one pretty easily. Number 2, I have Alabama, and for anybody who thinks that they should have dropped for only beating an unranked team by one, two reasons why I'm not dropping them. One is Texas is a really hard place to go in and play. The stadium seats like 100,000, and it's really, really loud. And two, good teams find ways to win games, and Alabama found a way to win that game. So number 3, I actually have Michigan. I know it's probably surprising, but I think Michigan's the best team in the Big Ten once again this year. And they did name J.J. McCarthy as the starting quarterback, which I like. I think he's got a much higher upside than Cade McNamara. But even if McNamara was starting, they still would have been here. They put up 59 on Hawaii. I would have called that. And next week they play UConn, who's another one of literally the worst teams in college football. So expect a similar result. Number 4 is where I have Ohio State falling to. Not because they didn't look impressive, but just because I don't think that they're better than Michigan. But I would have 1 and 2 as the top 2 SEC teams, 3 and 4 as the top 2 Big Ten teams. That's college football has come to at this point. And Ohio State, they play Toledo next week, so don't expect much to change here. Oklahoma, I have them coming in at number 5. They were number 6 last week, and they beat Kent State 33-3. They looked bad in the first half, I got to admit, but second half they got it together. They scored on every single drive and looked a lot better as a team. And next week they go up against Nebraska, who they just fired Scott Frost, but they're just a dumpster fire right now. So it would be kind of funny if Oklahoma lost the game, but I wouldn't really count on it. Number 6 is where I have Clemson falling to. I had them number 4 last week. They beat Furman 35-14, but once again, I'm just really not sold on this team. I do think that they have a good defense, but that offense is they're going to struggle if they play real teams. Number 7 is where I have Arkansas jumping up to. They dropped 44 on South Carolina, and sure they gave up 30, but that was because South Carolina was really just chasing the game the whole time. The whole time I knew Arkansas was going to win. Bad news is they lost their starting safety Jalen Catalon, who's probably one of their best defensive players. But Drew Sanders, one of their linebackers, he had himself a game. It seemed like he was making every tackle, flying all over the field. And KJ Jefferson, I'm just going to say spoiler, he's not on my Heisman top 10 because I forgot to put him in there. But he is looking like a top 10 player in the country right now. If he keeps playing like this, he could potentially win the Heisman. And yeah, I have Arkansas jumping up 9 spots from 16. And I've been really impressed with them so far. Number 8 is where USC. They're the highest rated Pac-12 team. They were at number 10. They had a pretty impressive win over Stanford. Overall, they looked pretty good, but the defense was questionable. The offense looked as good as I expected. But they go up against Fresno State, who does have a really good quarterback in Jay Kaner, so I'll be interested to see what he can do. And now at number 9, I have Kentucky. I've been jumping all the way up from 19, another SEC team in the top 10. I think the are underrating Kentucky. Will Levis, whatever. He's a great quarterback, even though he didn't look great. But that Kentucky defense just all around looks solid. And it's not like there's any big names on that defense to cover, but everybody just played well. And they completely shut down Florida in a way that Utah just couldn't do. So I'm rated number 19. They play Youngstown State next week, but they do play Georgia later on the season, and that'll be their real test. So Oklahoma State, I have them coming in at number 10. I was going to put them here last week, and then I remembered that they gave up 44 to Central Michigan. And I was like, yeah, y'all going to have to wait another week. But I moved over from 13 to 10. And they had a close game against Arizona State, and that was until the fourth quarter where Spencer Sanders just took over. And if he keeps playing like this, y'all could make a run at the playoffs. I mean, you're going to have to beat Oklahoma, but I mean, I could see that happening. But next week they play Arkansas Pine Bluff, so if they don't beat them by 60, then I'll be surprised. Number 11 is where I have Miami. They were struggling in the first half a little bit, but then they got it together in the second half. Kind of the same thing as Oklahoma. But they play Texas A&M, who's coming off of a pretty bad loss to Appalachian State. So I think that should be one of the best games this week. BYU, I have them jumping up pretty highly, and it just absolutely kills me to do this since I can't stand BYU. Me and my friend considered going to this game because we live about an hour from BYU, but it was late and the game finished like, oh god, at midnight. I didn't even stay up to watch it. It finished, I think, actually closer to 1 my time, and I just didn't really bother to stay up to watch it. But I did see the highlights of the ending against Baylor, who I thought was a good team. But BYU, they were without their top two receivers, and they still found a way to win. I don't like Jaron Hall simply because he goes to BYU, but I gotta admit, this guy, he seems to be a pretty good quarterback. But they do have to go to Oregon, and yeah, I'm not sold on Oregon being a good team, but it'll still be a challenge for them. So coming in number 13 is where I have Wake Forest. They jump up from 22 to 13. I think the reason y'all are underestimating how good of a team Vanderbilt is. I think Vanderbilt's better than y'all give them credit for, and Wake Forest made Vanderbilt look like Vanderbilt. If I think that's a pretty fair way to put it. But I wasn't too impressed with them after week one. But with Sam Hartman coming back, they looked so much better, and they have a really good receiver in A.T. Perry. So I'm kind of interested to see what those two guys can do. 14 is where I have Utah. They were clearly pissed off about losing to Florida as they dropped 73 on Southern Utah. Uh, Good job, I guess, but I mean it is Southern Utah. But next week they play San Diego State. This is a game that I mean I might go to some of. If I can find cheap tickets, I might just uh, go to like the second half after homecoming. We'll see, but I mean they should be able to win the game. Tennessee is where I think making the biggest jump as they've jumped up. They were unranked previously. I don't really have that much faith in Tennessee because I mean this is Tennessee we're talking about. But they had a pretty impressive win against Pitt, who I do think is overrated. But it was still an impressive win on the road. And next week they go to play Akron, so if they don't beat them by 50, then like I said, that'll be disappointing for them. But Tennessee, once again, they'll play Georgia, they'll play Kentucky, and if they can somehow win those games and not drop easy games like they always do, then hey, maybe they could go to a New Year's Six bowl. But I no, that's probably not going to happen. This is Tennessee. Penn State is where I have coming in at 16. They're another team I have have coming into the rankings after being unranked. They put on a they put on a show against Ohio, but they do go on the road to play Auburn. I don't think Auburn's that good of a team this year at all, but if they can win, that'll be a big win for them, and they'll probably move up a little bit more. But I don't think I gave enough credit after their win against Penn State. That was actually against Purdue. That not Penn State. They are Penn State. That game was one of my favorite games to watch from Week One, and I think that both of those teams are actually pretty solid teams, and I think Penn State could give Ohio State and Michigan a run for their money, and probably Michigan State too, but they're going to have to beat them if they want any chance of really moving up. So Michigan State is coming in at 17. Like I said, they had a big win over Akron, and they do go to play Washington on the road next. Like I said, I don't think Washington's a great team, but any road game against like a major school, it's a challenge. So if they can win, they might move up a few spots, but right now they fell 2 spots. Texas is where I've them coming in at 18. I know that like it's probably surprising they actually came in the actual rankings, but with Quinn Ewers, I do think they're a top 15 team. But without him, and he will miss a few weeks with a shoulder injury, then they're significantly worse with Hudson Card at quarterback. But they were able to hang with Alabama, which I didn't have any expectations for Texas going into this game. It was kind of just don't get blown out, and I thought that they were going to win, but Bryce Young is Bryce Young, and Texas just couldn't. They just couldn't do it in the end. But if they did, they would have likely been in my top five. Florida, I have them falling all the way to 19. I only had them at 17 last week, so it's not that big of a jump. Anthony Richardson went from looking like a Heisman contender to playing like, I don't know, an average quarterback. He was missing easy passes, throwing bad interceptions, couldn't get anything going on the ground. And I'm telling you, when this guy is not playing like the second coming of Tim Tebow, Florida is a much, much worse team. So that's why I can't really rank him that highly. Luckily for him, they play USF next week, so it should be easy for them to bounce back. Ole Miss, I have them coming in at 20. I'd really considered putting them ahead of Florida, and I probably should. But they really haven't played anybody yet, and next week they play Georgia Tech, so it's not really going to change, so I'm not moving them at all in the rankings. Florida State, they were off. They play Louisville next week. I just didn't move them at all, so not much to talk about here. UNC, they struggled against Georgia State, which I was surprised about, and they're off next week. But I don't think I'm giving this team enough credit for how good they actually are, especially their offense. Their defense, they don't deserve any credit, but Drake May is looking like a Heisman contender. That offense is looking like one of the best in the country, and I think we underestimated Appalachian State personally. So them barely beating them is now not quite as bad after what Texas A&M had to go through. And NC State, I don't think I gave them enough respect, but I still don't think they're as high, like that they should be ranked as highly as they should because they were Eastern Kentucky or Eastern Carolina having a good kicker away from being 1-1. But they bounced back, blew out Charleston Southern. But next week they're gonna play Texas Tech. Hey, I'm live right now. All right. So coming in 24, I have Wisconsin. I know that they lost to Washington State, but I'm a lot higher on this team than most people, and I think Washington State's a decent team, even though they're not in my top 25. But if they can beat the better teams in the Big Ten, that's how they'll move up. But next week they go and play New Mexico State, so if they win, good for them. But if they lose, then they can forget about ever being in my top 25 again. 25 is where I have Baylor falling to. This is pretty big for them, but honestly, you lost to BYU. Like, I get that I have BYU ranked really, really high, but I still don't think they're the best football team. And don't give me the excuse of, oh, it's a hard place to play. No, it's not. It's BYU. Y'all can go into Texas, y'all can go into Oklahoma, y'all can go into Oklahoma State, take wins there. But you come to BYU and you choke like that. I mean, I still think they're a top 25 team, but I don't think that they're really that good after what they did this week. Maybe I'm overreacting, but hey, we'll have to see. So that is my top 25. I don't think I did. Yeah, I didn't